Why is the Honkai series so confusing? Well, they have that tree of life thing going on where everything is branched together and has its own timelines. But that's just part of why it's confusing. Anyways, this is a video from Homu Labs. Shout out to them for creating this 2 years ago. Why is the Honkai series so confusing? Translation and terminology issues explained. So let's go ahead and check this out. This was sent into the Discord, so shout out to you. Appreciate you, brother or sister. I don't know. But yeah, thank you for sending this video, and let's go ahead and check this out.
Everything.
Oh, sorry. You okay? It's all related to that tree.
Have you ever wondered how all the Hoyoverse games are connected? Why do we have variants of the same character in different games? Or why do so many games share identical concepts? I swear to God, if I'm ever going
What the
to
hell
hear
was
games
that?
share identical concepts, I swear to God. If I'm ever going to hear the word samsara again, I'm going to kill someone. Venti? May?
Venti.
Piece of, Otto? What are you even doing here? Go home, you have a kid to raise. It's no coincidence that all the Hoyo games have so many things in common, since, well, they all happen in a shared universe, also dubbed the Honkai universe by the CEO of MiHoYo, Kai Haoyu, during the 2020.
He looks very young. Congratulations, Mr. Sai. Is that his name? Mr. Sai? Congratulations on being so successful, man.
CDG lecture.
It is because our company has a goal in mind, and which is to create the Honkai universe.
A fun fact about the name Hoyoverse, which right now is the company's branding for all game-related operations outside of China, is that the name was used by many people in the Honkai community to refer to the shared universe in which all the games take place prior to the rebranding. Also, please note that the company still uses the name MiHoYo in China. Knowing this, it's hard to not think if the new branding was intentional or not, but I digress. You may wonder, what does the fact that they are part of a shared universe means? Well, to explain,
it means everything can intertwine together and be seamlessly unique in its own at the same time.
it in the simplest way possible, it means that all these games share the same cosmology. Even though the games explore a variety of different worlds and don't always interact, they still share a common cosmology and basic rules that govern them. A while ago I made a 3-part video series explaining the cosmology of Honkai Impact 3rd. Those videos are pretty outdated by now, so I wanted to take this opportunity and make an updated version with all the new things that we've learned in the past year and a half. But unlike the last time when I only presented the cosmology from the perspective of Honkai Impact 3rd, this time I will present it from the perspective of all the games that fall under the Hoyoverse umbrella. And yes, that also includes games like Genshin and lesser known games like GGZ. What's GGZ, you ask? Okay, let's play a quick game.
Girl Z.
Today on the Theater of Information game show, we have Steve, an
Yo, that's crazy. Bro put the angry video game nerd in his video. Bro, how many people in the Honkai community even know about the angry video game nerd, bro? That's crazy. Bro took me straight to the past to play some shitty games that were ass.
Hoyoverse fan who claims to play all of their games. Yeah, that's me. Steve, please tell us, how many Hoyoverse games are there? 2. And which are those 2?
I would have guessed 3.
Genshin and Honkai. Which Honkai, Steve? What do you mean? There's only one, right? Congratulations, Steve. You're a normie.
Correct answer is 7.
The correct answer is 7 if you count all the released games, or 8 if you want to include the game that is not released yet. The games are, in order of release, Fly Me to the Moon, Zombie Gal Kawaii, Gun Girls Z or GGZ for short, Honkai Impact 3rd, Tears of Themis, Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, and the currently unreleased Zenless Zone 0. From this list, we will eliminate Zombie Gal Kawaii since it doesn't have much of a story, and also Fly Me to the Moon, Tears of Themis and Zenless Zone 0 because Although there are some small hints that suggest that they are part of the Honkai universe, the devs never confirmed that. So we will focus mostly on GGZ, Honkai Impact 3rd, Genshin and Star Rail.
Okay, cool. Let's go.
This video series will have 5 parts, each one meant to explore different facets of the Honkai universe. The first part will address the various issues with the translation of the games and the inconsistent use of the terminology.
金星と呼ぶべきかな。金星と呼ぶ。
Huh?
金星と呼ぶ。金星と呼ぶ。
Bro.
It's important to address them as early as
They messed
possible
up.
because these issues make it almost impossible to obtain solid evidence to connect the games. Unless we use the CN text instead of the English one, which can be extremely misleading. But before we begin, I want to thank the entire Hoyoverse community for their help with this series, especially when it came to digging up information about GGZ. Hoyoverse is a community of dedicated Hoyoverse fans who offer an in-depth coverage of their games with a ton of guides and fun trivia. They have the most complete story guide for Honkai Impact 3rd and are constantly adding new information. So please go and check them out. Oh, and speaking of GGZ, I urge you to take any information related to it throughout this series with a huge grain of salt. Since the game is only available in CN and JP, all we know about it is from fan translations. And frankly speaking, only a small portion of the game is actually translated. The information is spread across various media, buried social media posts, and lost time-limited content, so even the CN fanbase has trouble piecing together the whole thing. In other words, we know jack about it. I felt the need to emphasize this because there are a lot of people with many misconceptions about the game based on incomplete information. It's very important for us to be careful about GGZ because misinterpreting even a single line of dialogue can have huge effects on how the lore is understood. Anyway, let's begin with the most frustrating issue: the translation cluster.
Mandarin
The biggest
English.
issue when it comes to the translation is the fact that it literally cannot be trusted. And this is something that all the Hoyo games have in common. A lot of the time, when people translate text from Chinese to English, the translators take some liberties to change the original text. Some are intentional and some are made by accident. But regardless of the reasoning, this makes the English translations very unreliable when trying to find common points. This is why for the rest of this video series I will refer to the Chinese version of the text instead of the English one. Not only is it a lot closer to the original vision of the developers, but you'll also see that it's a lot more consistent throughout the games and makes pointing out certain connections a lot easier. I wanted to add that this is not necessarily because the translations are bad or that the people behind them didn't do their job properly. Though sometimes that can be the case, but for the most part these kinds of things are normal. The localization teams behind these games work their butts off to bring us these stories in English, and they deserve all the praise and appreciation. It's just that the Honkai series spans over multiple games with different translation teams that lack a lot of information and are behind a tight schedule. So sometimes the liberties that they take with their translations can cause inconsistencies with the CN text or other games. Now that we've established that the English translation is pretty unreliable, it's time to talk about the other big issue: the misleading nature of how the games try to present information. While this issue can be an aftermath of unreliable translation, in most cases, Hoyo's explanation of their own cosmology is inconsistent by design. This is due to many reasons. Hoyoverse uses a narrative technique called an unreliable narrator. Those of you who played Honkai Impact 3rd and Genshin should be a bit more familiar with it. How many times have you seen characters reveal something important about the lore just so that it turns out later that what they said was false? Or some other character appears out of nowhere with a totally different interpretation of the same thing. This happens because Hoyoverse tells these stories through the limited perspective of these characters. Many times, important information is presented just as a theory or as a vague description from the perspective of one character. But that character doesn't have the full picture either, and that's when inconsistencies between different explanations occur. A good example would be Ado's discourse about the Honkai imaginary tree and the Sea of Quanta in chapter 17 of Honkai Impactor. Initially, Ado proposes the idea that the Honkai is some sort of test/filter mechanism of the imaginary tree. And for a while, this became the accepted understanding of the Honkai in the community. But later, part 1 finally came out and Dr. May revealed that Honkai is controlled by an entity called the Cocoon of Finality, which is a higher dimensional being formed by the merging of multiple civilizations.
Wow.
Soon after part 1 of Honkai Impactor ended, the ending of the Reborn storyline in GGZ reinforced Dr. May's theory about the Honkai, adding even more context to these beings that control it, but I'll talk more about that when we get to explore GGZ in depth later into the series. And this unreliable narrator isn't always necessarily a character. Let's look at another example, this time from Genshin Impact. One of the ways Genshin likes to reveal its lore is through the texts and the books that the players can find in the open world, and these books can have quite an impact.
Ha! I see what you did.
I'm looking at you before Sun and Moon. But besides that, there are various other books that reveal information about characters and events. One of those characters is the Geo Archon himself, aka Broke Daddy Zhongli. In the early days of Genshin, books like Rex Incognito talked about the life of the Geo Archon and how they would journey in the mortal realm by shape-shifting into various forms. Many people took that book as fact, but during an event that came out later, Zhongli himself confirms that the materials of the books are false and that all the things that we thought we knew about his past were in fact just fabricated lies. Because of that, it's important to remember that any character can be wrong and that everything can be changed down the line if Hoyo desires to do so.
Sure,
Another example, but this time between two different games, is how the imaginary tree is presented in Star Rail and Honkai Impact 3. In Star Rail, the data bank presents the concept of the imaginary tree as a theory proposed by Zendar, the first member of the Genius Society. Having the imaginary tree as a theory in Star Rail makes a lot of sense, since from the perspective of the majority of the people, the concept is very elusive and not very well understood. Meanwhile, in Honkai Impact 3, the imaginary tree is a much more tangible concept, since we have characters like Ado who was able to manipulate the wedge of the world and create a new timeline. But even so, the concept is still very elusive even in Honkai Impact 3. Don't get the wrong impression that Ado knew everything. He just knew enough to make his plan work. And as a final disclaimer before we get into the terminology, keep in mind that explaining the entire cosmology of a 10-year-old game series is nigh impossible. There will always be something missing, something that doesn't make sense, or something that we can't explain.
And that is perfectly fine. We don't need to have the answers to absolutely everything. But for some people, that ain't enough.
Now, before we get to talk about the terminology, I want to apologize in advance because I'm going to try to pronounce some of these words in Chinese.
Okay, let's pause it here. I think this is a good spin-off. This was good. This first part of the video was absolutely really good in explaining why it is so hard to just understand the Honkai series in itself. We'll get into the terminology next time. I actually need to go take a nap. Yeah, crazy enough. Yeah, I need to take naps. So this definitely has me interested. We're gonna check out more of this for sure. Till then, hit the like button. It's your boy KhunShawn. Leave your comments down below and explain more of like the other series if you would like to. I definitely will come back to this soon. I just need to go lay down a little bit and then I can come back after the batteries are refreshed. But yeah, I'll see you guys soon.